Welcome to the bold analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, after the last presidential election, William Samoei Ruto ran a very successful smear campaign against the DCI, and the DCI unit, even SS unit, was disbanded because they were pushed to explain about the whereabouts of Indian national who disappeared and actually, according to reports, had been abducted around Westlands. In the report, in the fact that he was blaming the previous administration for having abducting and the Indian national who was working in William Ruto's presidential secretariat and the presidential team. And the report was not released. And in fact, there was a scanty report about who this person was and what was his activity or what did he do. Now, 1 year later, do you know that that case died a natural death? The SS unit members that were arraigned in court and charged was all PR exercise, and as we warned that it was never going to be a very successful path. Now, they were moved and accused of all those manner of accusations so that they produced the Indian national. 1 year later, that Indian national is yet to be produced. And today, there's a report, one judge bench in India has given the Ministry of External Affairs and the Ministry of Home Affairs, Kenyan authorities, 3 weeks ultimatum to give the details of the whereabouts of that journalist, Zulfikar Ahmad Khan. And according to them, they have actually released the report, and they're saying, because, initially we were told he was supposed to work into William Ruto's, team. It was not explained. Now, what has been confirmed is that he was a digital journalist. What has happened is digital media. He was working with the digital media team allied to President William Ruto. Now, I've tried to listen to this in the way that story is developing. Because William Ruto became the president, and the way there was the zeal and the commitment of looking for that gentleman or looking for that Indian national, you would not even want to imagine that they would be unsuccessful. Number two, that because they have all the instruments of power, they have the sword and everything, and the state intelligence is under William Ruto, that activity, no one believed that it was never going to yield any fruit. Now, let me shock you. The justice made the ruling asking for the Indian journalist to be produced after this journalist's sister claimed that the journalist was being detained in Kenya. Now, if this guy was working for William Ruto, and if this guy is still alive in this country, it doesn't need magical science, or whether this person is in this country, it doesn't need magical science that this person is yet to be found. And the sister has even moved forward. The judge ordered, he went and said that his brother is illegally being detained in the country. The judge ordered the Ministry of External Affairs and all other relevant authorities use the possible channels to coordinate with the Kenyan authorities to ascertain the whereabouts of the petitioner's brother. Khan disappeared together with his brother and their driver after they were ousted by people claiming to be Kenyan police officers. And according to it, after William Ruto was sworn in, investigations on the disappearance of Khan and his colleagues kicked into top gear. The guy who was arrested and with his brother understand that the arrest was actually in Westlands. Let me read some few feedbacks before I look at political interpretation of this. Someone is saying they are probably dead. That's why they are silent on this issue. The Indian government will pile pressure now. So sad to hear. They should be released if still arrested, and if dead, someone has to take responsibility. Now, I'm not on matters of crime, but I'm looking at it politically this way. If the Indian fellows are dead, then the government still has the intelligence and ability to know where they are. To to maybe produce those bodies and give the family body back to the other end. That is a possibility, because whichever way, it does not, even if they are dead, there is no way it's going to be associated with William Ruto, because William Ruto was actually the victim in this context. So that's number one bit of it. Number two, if they are being detained, then why would you think William Ruto would continue to allow them to police to detain these fellows who allegedly worked for him? And according to him, he actually wants these people to succeed in whatever they're doing. Or actually, he wants to be seen as if he has saved the situation, or rather, his presidency has given these fellows freedom. Now, this leaves it in the middle of nowhere. The other thing here is the arrest and the kind of effort that was put pursuing the whereabouts of the Indians seems to have gone down, and the government side has toned down instead of trying to push this critical aspect. So the one question that comes in is this, and this is what I'm actually trying to see here. Why do you think Ruto administration has failed to account for this matter? Because if they're dead, they will still produce the body and find a way and give it evidence, and if it was dirty work, and give it. Number two, even if they're arrested, they will still produce and still account. Whichever way, Ruto's hand will still remain clean. But these fellows are not to be released. These fellows, their whereabouts are nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to look at it in these three critical interpretations. Before I look at that, kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell, and like our videos. Thank you very much for those who support our podcasts from different parts of the world. I'm just so glad. Today I've been to Machakos here, and it's quite an amazing place here. I was just happy, you got and you meet with people who also, they know the bowl, they interact with the podcast, and it's quite a very critical, it's quite a very humbling position. But then tukikutana tusalimiane, unajua we are all human beings. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are some three political interpretations I'm making here. Number one, just like the push for looking for this gentleman was critically part of a smear campaign against the previous administration, but the top gear effort that was put allegedly looking for these fellows was never intended at producing them. Why am I saying? This matter has been very emotive. I remember DCI Kinoti, by the time DCI Kinoti was leaving office, the first report that emerged was, the report that emerged was that these fellows, there was some police station somewhere, I don't know, with a can of bottle, I don't know, of blood, they ran a smear campaign on using extrajudicial killings against that administration. And some of us political analysts, we actually raised the question that whose hand is clean? And if genuinely that was the push, then we needed to see, looking at even the back, digging the graves. And that is what the family then has to realize. And that is why they've gone back to India, because this case was actually in this country. It was actually here in the Kenyan administration. He has realized that the Kenyan the system was never interested in producing this person. It was never interested. Now, the other second interpretation is this. Ruto transition was managed, and we really insisted that it was mismanaged, because immediately settled into office, there was a lot of unnecessary fights and wars with even security officers, especially on this matter. And it has always been raising a very critical question into, did Ruto really establish his state? One thing that clearly comes out of this is President William Ruto has failed to infiltrate Uhuru Nation. It has failed to critically infiltrate Uhuru Nation because if this was to be done by the rogue fellows in the previous administration, then what will stop them from now producing that body, or rather accounting for that case, especially now to the current administration? And William Ruto could have realized that it was not going to be tenable. Then the third thing here is, I think the case was suppressed because it would have opened a Pandora box about the last general election. There is one question that people have always been asking. Digital team, do you need someone from India? What was his role in the elections? What was his role in William Ruto's digital team, a man who campaigned on hustlers and was supposed to employ hustlers? What was his role? It critically shows one point, that there is something that is not going on right. Thank you very much, guys. And I think Ruto was never intended, did not have the intention to make sure this matter, or rather the body, is brought, the case is brought to logical conclusion. And I think to the Indians, they must really agree with some of us that our criminal justice system is flawed. And on such matters, sometimes the pockets dictate what is coming out of a process. Thank you.